Our lovely bartenders Breland and Heather are slinging some stiff drinks, and we have some great musicianship in the house. Later on this evening, we have two amazing tribute bands. At 7:30, the Purple Experience playing the music of Prince, and later on at 9, the New York Bee Gees, and you're all invited to stay if you want to check out a tribute to Prince or the Bee Gees. But let's get focused on what you all came here to see tonight. I would introduce the host if I knew his name, but we'll let him take over from now.
Phone on? All right, there we go. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us here at the Cutting Room. I'm Alan Paul. We're here for a BackStory event. Thank you. We're at a BackStory event. Thank you to Guitar World for hosting it live and to the Cutting Room for literally hosting it live. Welcome to everyone tuning in on the internet, and of course to those of you who joined us here live and in person. So glad to welcome to the stage Oteil Burbridge. I'm sure you know Oteil as a longtime bassist in the Allman Brothers, Dead and Company, and he's got a great new solo album I'm sure a lot of you know. Your love and applause for Oteil drowned out my mentioning of his solo album that you need to know about. It's called Water in the Desert. I've been listening to it a lot. It's really wonderful. I know a lot of you have heard it, and those of you who haven't need to get it. At the end of the show, we're going to have to clear this room because of the upcoming shows, but Oteil will be out there. There's some merch, and he'll be out there to meet, greet, say hello, and sign all the great merch you're going to buy. So no further ado, thank you. Welcome, Oteil.
Thank you.
Thank you. And one other thing I should mention, Oteil is in town now because he's got a couple of shows, Monday in New York, Tuesday at Brooklyn Bowl. Both of those are sold out, but also Wednesday down in Philadelphia at the Theater for the Living Arts. There are some tickets for that, and it's not that far, especially if you live in New Jersey like me. So get in your cars and drive to Philly because you need to see this band. So Oteil, let's talk about your record, Water in the Desert. It's been, I think, 12 years since you did a solo record. Is that right? And
Probably. What was it, 2005?
yeah.
I put my last one out.
So why now? I mean, has it been something you've wanted to do that you were waiting for the songs to strike? Or?
No, actually, I wrote a lot of it 10 years ago. And I just was at a period of great change in my life, you know. And I was getting my life together, finally, you know. And so in my defense, I did get married, have a kid, move twice or 3 times. And a lot happened, so it just kept getting put on the back burner. And I actually wasn't even going to put it out at all. It was my wife's pressure. Like, I did another record of all banjo stuff, and I just had moved on from Water in the Desert and was like, can I just put the banjo record? She's like, put that record out, you know? I spent so much time and money on it, and I also become like too critical of things. Like, I know, like, when you record something, just put it out immediately. Like, don't sit there and, because I'll overanalyze it to death, and then it was just like, I don't want to put it out. Which is crazy. So every time I get some really good feedback from somebody now about it, it just shows me how wrong my own thinking was. Like, if you think too much for too long, it's not good. You just go off the tracks, you know.
Right, because we were talking before about how I love the record, but I have a hard time describing it. And because it's all really different. And you know, there's definitely a lot of R&B elements, there's a lot of jazz, but neither of those would really be proper descriptions of the album. So, but I feel like it's kind of gospel based in its feel. Is that make sense to you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have a lot of different influences just from growing up in my parents' house. They were really into music and into all different kinds of music, like everything. My dad had Porter Wagner records. I mean, he's from Bronx, New York, so he had all the the jazz stuff, and he had all the, he had everything, every kind of music. But I remember the Porter Wagner records because I was like, this dude's outfit is out of control, But he was really into every style of music, but jazz was really his main thing.
Right, and one of the wonderful pictures you shared on Instagram or something in the last year or so is a picture of you as a wee little boy with Duke Ellington.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, which is a great picture, but how did that happen?
I was 4. My Aunt June, who's the one that taught us how to eat blue crabs, she's in D.C. She used to sing with Duke when he came through town, so it was through her, I'm pretty sure, we got the opportunity to meet him. And she wasn't my real aunt, a blood aunt, a really good friend of the family, so we called her Aunt June. And yeah, I actually have a really, really vague memory of it, But I thought, well, there you go. That's what happens when you get lucky enough to have parents like that who are taking you out to see Duke when you're 4 years old,
Right, and I'm sure most people know, maybe some people listening online don't, that your brother, Kofi, who's all over this album, is a wonderful musician as well, a great keyboard player and flute player, and probably plays everything else I don't even know about. And it plays with the Tedeschi Trucks Band and is all over this record. So the two of you coming up with the musical talent that you have, were your parents musicians? Did you play with one another?
Yeah, my dad, his religion truly was music. And they discovered my brother had perfect pitch when he was 7 years old. And I think the teacher asked the students to memorize the notes, and he mistakenly thought the assignment was to memorize the pitches. So he memorized them because he could, and he didn't know it wasn't possible to memorize them. And so he came in and freaked the teacher out, and he called my dad. My dad was like, I knew he was picking up stuff kind of fast, but okay, so it's like Stravinsky, Tchaikovsky, like all the classical, all the jazz, Miles, Bird, Diz, Train, like everything. Kofi's just like, yeah. And by 12, he was playing with sitting in with Donald Byrd and Ron Carter and these heavyweight cats.
And he was doing all of that by ear? You just listen and...
No, he could read music. I mean, he went to music school, North Carolina School of the Arts. He left home when he was 14. We're from Washington, D.C., so that was like going to another country. And we were kind of scared because, down south, all we ever saw of the South was on Martin Luther King's birthday when they rolled out the black and white footage of dogs and hoses and stuff. But I've lived in the Deep South for 30 years now, and I got down there and I couldn't leave. Just something about all the music heritage down there just, just grabbed me. So, but Kofi, he, I can play the way I do because I thought he was normal, so I was trying to keep up with him. And then when I got to high school, I started playing with guys, and I was like, man, these guys can't play, And I went, Kofi, I'm just having a crisis, what's going on, He's like, man, not everybody's into the stuff we're into. I'm like, okay, So I just, now that I'm older, I'm like, wow, what a lucky guy was, geez. He was into heavy stuff really young.
Like what? Give us some examples. What were you playing with, Kofi?
Well, I was just trying to learn his tunes. See, he had this bass player, and I didn't want to ask to be in their band because I couldn't really play that well yet. And so I don't know if I'm getting too far away with the mic, okay. Sorry. But I was like, okay, I'm going to have to blow that guy away to make Kofi ask me to be in his band. So that was my mission. So I just learned all their stuff. And he was showing me like Joe Henderson and showing me some fusion stuff and some jazz stuff. I knew how to play jazz on drums. I'm a drummer. I started playing when I was 5. And but I didn't, harmony and all that stuff was like over my head. And so he taught me, with using Stevie Wonder, Earth, Wind and Fire, and then crossing over into fusion and then into straight ahead jazz to get me into the harmony, So I was just, my whole life to this day, I'm just trying to keep up with him. you know, and I haven't caught up yet, not by a long shot.
Well, our dear mutual friend, Colonel Bruce Hampton, told me once that he hired you originally as a drummer, right?
Yeah, that was my first gig with the Colonel.
He told me that he hired you as a drummer, and then he heard you playing bass at a sound check or something and said, "You're fired and you're hired."
He tells that story. He knew I was a bass player, but it's a good story. But he did hire me as a drummer the first time. But it was because some guy bailed out, you know, and in perfect Colonel Bruce fashion, I get there, and there's a cymbal case. And I'm like, "Where are the drums?" And he goes, "They're right there." And I was like, "That's a cymbal case. You know, where are the rest of you?" "I swear, open it." You know, so you open it, and it's this new invention, and it's just rims and heads. So there's a bass drum head, a floor tom head, another head, a snare head, and then you like fold it out, and it just folds out into this drum set, and you attach a foot pedal. I was like, really? But the kit actually sounded good. And we played this wedding reception with it just fine, and that was my first gig with the Colonel.
So, the first
Nut job.
Yeah. The first time I saw you was with the Colonel. It was in right when that first record was coming out, 91, 92, I don't know. At the Ritz, you opened for...
You were at that. Bill Milkowski was at that.
Yeah.
We opened for the Dixie Dregs?
Yeah, you opened for the Dixie Dregs.
That's right.
And, you know, you had a great publicist, Mark Pucci, who was really...
great.
Mark was hammering me, get there early. These guys are great. These guys, you know, publicist stuff. And I'm like, okay. So I get there early, and I walk up to front of the stage, and you guys came out, and I thought, who are these people, and what are they doing? You know, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, this is Colonel Bruce Hampton, the Aquarium Rescue Unit, and it was Oteil on bass, Jimmy Herring on guitar, Jeff Sipe on the drums, who was apartment Q248, did I get that right? 58, sorry. And Matt Mundy on the mandolin. And for those of you who never saw Matt, he was a mandolin player who was on mandolin like he was on bass and Jimmy is on guitar. And he was playing a Mando Blaster, like a little mini Telecaster. And then you had Bruce, this crazy guy with playing a little 4-string ukulele electric thing. And I just was completely flipped out. And you guys were, it's very hard to describe, really. The power of the music was intense. And so let's just start there and go backwards. What did, as a bass player, what did Bruce and playing in that band give you? What did they bring to you?
Actually, it has nothing to do with bass, what he gave me. And was the greatest lesson of all, because he wanted me to stop playing bass. He was like, you have to play yourself. You know, the bass doesn't matter. It could be a broomstick, watch. And he'd grab a broomstick and like, he would do it. I mean, it was crazy. I was like, well, you can do that, but I can't. He was like, you know, BS, of course he can't. You know, so his whole thing was you got to get out of your own way. He used to say, well, one of his sayings was, you're not good enough to be humble, so you should get an ego. He would tell me that. I'm not joking. Yeah, he said, you should get a massive ego because you're not good enough to be humble. Like Zakir Hussain, you know, the really like amazing musicians, and they're all so humble. He's like, you're not that good, so go ahead, you know. And but then he would always tell me, he said, you know, your idea of what you think you are is like this, and what you actually are is limitless. So if you'll allow me to destroy what this idea of yourself that you have is, we can get to what you really are. And the only reason I bought it was because Colonel Bruce really couldn't play like, you know, technically, like he didn't know what a diminished chord was or a scale but yet there would always be so much anticipation about what he was gonna play or sing next. You would just be like, what's he gonna do? And he'd do it, and you'd be like, oh my God, and everybody next to you, like, you see that? Yeah, like, how does he do it? You know, and sometimes he was off, but most of the time he was on, and it didn't have anything to do with music, you know, it had to do with life. He's like, I want to hear what your story is. So, and that's when I started to understand bands that I wasn't really into because I was looking for a certain style instead of listening for what their story was. So when I started hanging out with bluegrass musicians, and I met a lot of them, and I was like, there were bluegrass guys that they were like, yeah, the people in the community were pissed off at them for playing music for a living instead of working in the coal mine. It's like, you're just trying to get out of working in the coal mine. I was like, well, hell yeah, I'm trying to get out of working in the coal mine. They're dying trying to make a living, That was one of the things they said, man, we're dying trying to make a living, And they were right. And I was like, wow, these are, that's their story, what was coming out. And it just like blew me away. Then all of a sudden I understood Delta Blues. Then all of a sudden I understood Sun Ra and Ornette Coleman and Cecil Taylor. I was like, this is just what their story is. This is what they are, like a bird makes, this type of bird makes this sound, that type of bird makes this sound. They're being what they are. They're not, almost like they're not doing, which is a big thing of his, like the Book of the Tao, like to just be and not do. Like, is a fish doing when it swims, or is it just being? It's just, that's what it is. It swims,
So your next big gig that brought you to a lot of people's attention after Bruce was the Allman Brothers. So how did the whole playing the broomstick thing go with Dickie Betts?
Dickie was a big Colonel Bruce fan, and Greg was till the day he died scared of him. And I'll tell you a funny story, because Bruce, he always said, when I'm lying, I'm telling the truth, and when I'm telling the truth, I'm lying. And he was lying at that point. He told me this elaborate story, and I thought, okay, this one's not true, So when Jimmy joined, it was me, Jimmy, and Derek Trucks on the front line, and we just went out. It was during Mountain Jam or something, and Greg was not into it, And he came out of the bus, out of the back of the bus later. Me and Derek and Jimmy rode on his bus, and he was like, yeah, that thing y'all were doing in Mountain Jam. He goes, man, don't ever do that again. And poor Jimmy felt so bad, because the whole thing with Dickie then, and he was just, I was like, dude, don't worry about it. And then Greg came back out later, and he apologized. He said, I'm sorry, man. It's y'all's band too, and, if that's what you are feeling, then, it's not my place to just, like, shut it all down. In fact, let me backtrack. When he came out, he goes, who's the Fish fan? And we were like, what is he talking about? And he goes, man, that stuff you were doing in Mountain Jam. We're like, oh. We're like, well, that's probably more Colonel Bruce, like Sun Ra. Yeah, well, whatever that is, man, don't ever do that again. But he said, man, I'm sorry, and, you guys he goes, Dwayne used to love that stuff, man. I never did get it, but Dwayne used to love it. So Dwayne and Dickie were into it. They played with him. I think it was Atlanta Pop Festival or something like that. And Bruce he had a white picket fence and a chainsaw, like a section of it that was just set up here. He had a table and a chair and like a lamp, and some guy sitting there reading the newspaper, and somewhere in the set he fires up the chainsaw. So this stuff like freaked Greg out. He was like, what is going on, And Bruce never did any drugs. He never did any LSD or anything. And so he was born in the right time, And but Dwayne loved it, and Dickie loved it. And I'll never forget, Bruce came out to Lakewood Amphitheater the first time he came out, and I saw this happen with my own eyes. I swear to God. Greg knew he was coming. He was kind of freaked out. And Greg didn't see me see this, but he was waiting for Bruce to come, and he did this. And I was like, oh, my God, he's still scared. So I was like, so that night on the bus, I'm like, dude, what happened that Bruce freaked you out that much? He goes, well, man, we did this gig with him, and he had this white picket fence. He goes in his long, elaborate story as a verbatim what Bruce told me, and I was like, that was true? Wow. Like, to the letter, and it never left him, And I thought, Bruce, man. That's all. You always with that guy. You're just like, man, Bruce. And his documentary is like that. You know, Basically Frightened, I think it's called.
Yeah.
I heard all these stories. The most outlandish was, it was like watching Big Fish. You ever see Big Fish? Like the end of Big Fish? Dude, that's that movie for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, except I was in it too.
Right.
And I was like, wow. I mean, guys are in tears. Like, you got to see it. Like, I could just go on and forever about the documentary. But they like, Dickie and Dwayne loved it. Dwayne's the one that got him his record deal on Columbia. Yeah. And he was friends with Pigpen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so when you,
I don't even remember what the question was.
We could just drop the mic and leave. It's hard to top Bruce, but so when you joined the Allman Brothers, you didn't, and the same thing with Dead and Company, I think. You know, you didn't really have any background in the music, right? So you've ended up being the anchor in two of the most iconic American rock bands, with no real background in either of them. And like a million guys with deep backgrounds who would love the gig, but you end up to be the perfect guy. So how did you get the, you know, how did you get the gigs? Let's start with the Allman Brothers. I mean, it's...
Well, in a way, I really did have the background, but it's like the I didn't have background in the Allman Brothers, but everything they were into, I was into and already, and what I didn't know about Bruce, Colonel Bruce filled me in on. Like, I was into a wide variety of musics, you know, jazz, funk, rock, all the different kinds of Latin music, whether it's South American, Puerto Rican, or Cuban, or from Spain, you know. We were into flamenco. My dad was into classical Indian music, European classical music, everything. My missing pieces were Delta blues, bluegrass. My dad had some country records and some bluegrass records, but he didn't really push that like he was pushing the jazz, you know. And so Bruce kind of filled in all those pieces that I didn't have, and then when I got that gig, I was like, oh, I get to use all of this. Like, I get to use the funk stuff and Don't Keep Me Wondering or Stand Back or some of the funk blues, and I get to use Latin stuff and Liz Reed, or even like Jessica, places you wouldn't necessarily think I'm doing Afro-Cuban stuff, but I am. Because I would hear Mark Quinones playing some pattern, I was like, oh yeah, this all fits together nicely, you know? So I just had to learn Allman Brothers music, which, you know, there was 30 years of it at that point, and it was a lot to bite off, but, you know, you just do them one tune at a time. And it's kind of the same with Dead and Company, you know, the roots of what they do is all stuff that I'm into. And but I've always learned, like, there's stuff that I learned from Greg or J-Mo or Dickie or, you know, in Den Company from Bob or Bill or Mickey or stuff that I didn't know. You know, there's always some little nuggets.
Well, we can go each band separately, but how much do they give you specific directions? Like, no, don't play that on this song, play that.
You know, fortunately for me, both bands are improv based, so once the solo section starts, like, all bets are off. But, you know, I would get opposing directions all the time. You know, I mean, Greg would want me to play the same beat over and over, the same bass figure over and over, because the drummers were going over the bar line. I don't know if you guys know what that means, but if we're playing 4/4 and I start playing fives, where the one is not, like, you got to add them together or something for the one to coincide again for both of them. I forget what the equation is, but as a drummer, I don't think about it a lot. So I'll go with the drummers and the soloists. You know, the guitar will start the figure, it goes over, but now we're all over, and Greg doesn't know where the one is anymore. You know, he's not a drummer, so the bass is what he wanted to hold him down. But if I stayed there, it would keep the solo here, and when the guitar is starting to peak, they want me to go with him. I'd try to drive it higher and higher, you know, and sometimes it would go over the cliff, and it was like, that's improvisation. He would get frustrated by that. You know, in his band, you probably were hearing like 16-bar guitar solos, you know.
Right. You know.
So he would tell me to do one thing, and Dickie would tell me to do the exact opposite.
Right.
You know.
Right. And I think bass in particular for those guys was the very seat of contention, because and Greg was very unkind to David Goldfleece in his book. He said, we hired a bass player who thought he was paid by the note, and when I interviewed Rook for my book, he said, that hurt me so much because I begged Greg for direction, and he didn't really give it to me, and Dickie gave it to me constantly. Dickie would take me to his hotel room every night and say, here's what I want you to play. Yeah. So did you have that kind of experience?
Yeah. Although he told me, I was with him for 17 years, so he told me a number of times, how he wanted it, and eventually we just, we'd be like, have to have a band meeting about it. Be like, look, man, I can make you happy and make the guitarist miserable, So how I would deal with it is to give it to him exactly the way he needed it whenever he was singing, and then when the solo section starts, it's improv, because J-Mo he never liked long jams. J-Mo turned Dwayne on the Coltrane, and he was like, I want to jam long like that. And we're like, okay, So, I was with him. This was like 17 years later. He's like, why do the guitar solos have to be so long? I'm like, I don't know. You started this, I'm,
Right. Right.
Because it's the Allman Brothers, man. Don't look at me. I was 5 when you guys started.
And you mentioned singing, and so we got to talk about your singing a little bit. Your singing, So, you all are going to be blessed in just a little bit to hear Oteil sing a little bit, but you didn't sing very much in the Allman Brothers. Occasionally, you have a song come your way, and you end up in Dead and Company, and one of our friends who's here, Chris, starts this "Let Oteil Sing," right? Wearing T-shirts, and the next thing you know. You're singing. First, they gave you a verse on
"Feed Me on Cornbread and Beans."
And,
oh man!
And Warren had a real thing when they gave Warren the cornbread verse.
So he got that one too.
Oh, he got that one. He didn't like it.
Because we're from the South, is that?
I think no. It's throw the new guy the cornbread verse. See,
I feel better now that he got stuck with it too.
When I first heard you singing that, I was laughing. You never talked to Warren about that? Give him a call.
No, I definitely am going to text him about that.
But you went from singing the dreaded cornbread verse to singing some of the most beautiful, powerful, emotional ballads in the Grateful Dead canon. So how did that come about? I mean, do you go to them and say, hey, guys, I'd like to sing so many roads?
You know what's funny is I used to sing a little bit. In my band, I sang, but there were mostly tunes that I wrote. And I only did it because I had to. Like, the singer I had at the time was starting to drink again, and I had to let him go. And so I just took it over just to get the job done. But I never considered myself a singer. And I always had a hard time doing it. I never was sure of my pitch and all this and that. I was just like, whatever, I'm just trying to do the job, And so when we started rehearsals with Dead and Company, or actually probably a little bit before that, I started using inner ear monitors at the very end of the Allman Brothers, and I noticed I could hit my pitch way better because it closed out all the other sound. So it sounds weird. It sounds like you're in a studio session and not a live gig, and most musicians don't want to adjust to that. And it is a big adjustment, but I figured, well, being deaf is a big adjustment too. So I'll just make this adjustment. But the one thing it's great for is you're singing. So by the time we were in Dead and Company rehearsals, and we're doing these different songs, and I love China Doll. Might still be my favorite Grateful Dead tune. And we got to that song, and we're playing through it, and I'm like, yes, we're going to do China Doll. And then Bob didn't want to sing it, and John couldn't sing it because after his surgery, there's a little band of notes that he can't hit. So you don't notice it because he sings below it and above it, and he bounces around very well. So you would never notice. But a lot of those Jerry band ballads are right in that band. And so I was like, we're not doing China Doll, no. We have to do this song. So I'm like, guys, I will sing this song if we can't, because this is my favorite too. Like, we got, and, oh yeah, but you know what happened? Crickets. I was like, okay, I called my wife. I was like, that didn't go well. We'll just let that one lie. So I don't, and I guess everything's just timing. Like later on, I think I just brought it up again, and all of a sudden it took that time. And so, but the weird thing for me is, finally I can hear myself good, and I'm getting the chance to sing lead. And on these ballads are the hardest because there's so much space. But fortunately for me, it takes me, I need more time to like lock in on it. So it's better for me to do a ballad. And so the first time I'm like, okay, I think I can sing. There's 40,000 people out there. It was actually Folsom Field, I think, in Colorado. And fortunately for me, I couldn't hear the audience because I had my inner ear monitors in. So I get off stage and I go to my wife. I'm like, was that okay? And she goes, couldn't you hear the crowd like roaring? Like, I was like, no, I can't, you know. So John had been telling me to take one ear out, you know, and I just thought it would be too weird to be lopsided, you know. But one night I couldn't hear the reverb. I wanted to hear the reverb that's in the house. So I took one out and I started singing, and then the roar was just like insane, you know. And it's continues to be really surreal. Like, it's really weird.
Well, Oteil, you know, I'm not a big fan of stadium shows, but when I was at Citi Field last year, you know, after our years of friendship and relationship, when you started singing and there was that roar, that made the whole night just incredibly powerful and emotional for me. I was so happy, you know, for you, and that part of you has, you know, like, that's like the greatest thing that you could get in this big gig and discover and expose a new part of yourself, to yourself, not just to the audience.
Exactly.
It's not like it was in the shower, you know, that was like a new discovery for you.
It was weird, and I have an easier time singing Garcia Hunter tunes than my own. It's it's just one of those meant to be things. Like, I don't know. You should never think your best days are behind you, you know. Like, all this happened starting at 50 on. My son singing lead in stadiums with guys from the Grateful Dead. I mean, you know, we went to Grateful Dead 50 and they were talking to me at that point about the gig, but I didn't have it yet. And me and my wife went to the first show in Santa Clara. And so we're at this huge stadium, and I'm like, would you be able to, like, you know, we're trying to picture, like, I'm up there, and I'm like, I just can't picture it. Like, I can't. It's hard to believe that would actually really happen. And then, you know, a bunch of Citi Fields and Fenways later, and we still look. I'll stand there with my wife, and I'll be like, this is crazy. Yeah. Like, it's crazy.
You know, we're running out of time, and we talked about Bruce, we talked about Greg, and I just want to make sure we mention, you know, we lost so many people close to us last year, and it would be remiss not to mention Butch. And your relationship with Butch, both in the band and then with the Roots Rock Revival camp. So, do you have any thoughts on Butch you'd like to share?
You know, Butch is the one that got me in the band, and I met him. We were doing Frog Wings. You know, it's like a side project, and he said, "I'm going to get you in this band after Warren and Alan quit," and so I got a lot of history with him, with J-Mo too, actually, because I met J-Mo before Butch when I was living in Atlanta, but we didn't play together. Like, me and Butch had that time in Frog Wings, and then from, you know, all 17 years that I was with the Allman Brothers band, and you know, we used to always, I don't know if we would say fight or maybe friendly debate, although it didn't look like that with the sound down, about the existence of God, you know, and all this stuff, and everybody would roll their eyes, and I was like, I don't accept you don't believe in anything mystical when you've made millions off of it, you know, like, science can't quantify the emotions you feel from music. They can't quantify an emotion or who is experiencing it, consciousness, all these things, you know, and so it's perfect, you know, every band has this creative tension, you know, and that's what makes it great, you know, but his passing, you know, we were expecting Greg, you know, it wasn't a surprise, you know, even though he lived so many times, we kind of expected Greg to die for like 40 years, you know, but it's truly a miracle, you know. But Butch, that caught us off guard. Colonel Bruce, that just pulled the rug out from under me. And then the whole year, you know, the year started with Butch's death, and then it just rolled like a steamroller through the whole year. Almost got my brother, and you know, I think about Butch a lot. I just went to see his son Seth. He had the lead role in Hamlet in Shakespeare, Miami, down where I live in Boca Raton. He was just amazing. I just thought, I was sitting there with Melinda, Seth's mom, and Butch's wife, and I just thought, man, I hope I'm right and Butch can see that. I told his friend, I said, you know, if Butch was here right now, he wouldn't have been able to hear it because he was really deaf. So I was like, he probably can hear it perfectly now, you know. So I hope, you know, I'm right, not to be right, but so that he could see what Seth did, you know, because it's masterful. And, you know, Butch, he was so stubborn and, you know, bullheaded, but his intention was always 100% about the Allman Brothers band. That was his religion, you know, and he was right about a lot of stuff. He was right about Wani and Peach Fest. And I'm glad he started Mugas because all that stuff is in the can now, that legendary 40th anniversary run and a bunch of other stuff.
We have all that professional video of 2009 because of Mugas,
yeah,
which was Butch.
Yeah.
So I think, Brad, we have a couple questions from the audience. Is that where we are now?
Oh,
To drink my water.
Oteil, hi, how you doing? Just wanted to ask you about Roots Rock. You know, I've been a participant the last few years, and it's been great. And every year I'm there, I say, this is the best ever. Can't top it. And it keeps getting topped. Any thoughts about this coming year?
Oh, man. Well, you got stuff I can't even talk about. But, you know, it's like anything. It's like when you watch a child grow. Like, you should never think it can't get topped. Things, you know, a tree starts out like this, and then it's a redwood. You know, so we're all growing together in Roots Rock. And that's why it keeps getting better, you know. And it was really weird not having Butch there last time. But still all those relationships that we formed and the spark of what he started, that flame is growing even in his absence. And I think his absence even brought more meaning to it, you know, if that was even possible. But something like that will. And this year is going to be, I have no doubt that it's going to keep going. It's an amazing camp. We do, me and Butch Trucks and Luther and Cody Dickinson started it. And it's just, you come up there and you jam. We got guitar, bass, drums, horns, keyboard, whatever, and people come up and they want to learn how to improv and listen to each other and take chances. And so that's what we work on, just jamming, you know, keep the jam tradition alive.
And I've been there most of the year, so I can say it's a great week. And you're with like-minded people, so anybody who's interested should check it out.
Yeah, it's heavy.
I think we have time for one more before we get to music. Is there, Brad?
Hey, thank you, Alan. Thank you, Oteil. It was really fascinating hearing about, you know, your family's music background and all the different music that you were exposed to. Just out of curiosity, when was the first time that you recall listening to the Allman Brothers, and what were you doing? Were you in a car? Were you hanging out? What was it?
It's funny. I was at a party when I was right after high school, and it was just like a whirlwind. I'm going through this room to whatever other spot, and I stop and I hear this thing, and I'm like, who is that? And they're like, it was Whipping Post. It was like deep in the jam of Whipping Post. And I thought for a second it was Tony Williams' Lifetime. I was a big Fusion head, which they were listening to at the time. And my buddy was like, dude, that's the Allman Brothers band. Like, you haven't heard of them? I'm like, no, but that's pretty good. You know, on to the rest of the party, like, you know. And the next time was literally when I got the gig, you know. I was like, but, you know, as with the Grateful Dead, you know, when you're listening to something, you're listening for what your taste is, and if it doesn't fit in that parameter, you kind of move on, you know. But when you learn some music, when you have to learn to play it, like, you'll get great appreciation for stuff you thought you wouldn't really be into or might not have been into. And, you know, after learning all the Allman Brothers tunes, I'm just like, I guarantee you, the very last time we played Cross the Bear, my hair stood up just like the first time, you know, and a bunch of other tunes like that, a bunch of other tunes. And it's like that with the Grateful Dead, you know. I'm learning, I had to learn my first 50 songs, you know, and then you just run up on like China Doll, Stella Blue, Looks Like Rain, Black-Throated Wind, just like all these, and I'm like, oh my God, this is just like a gold mine that's keeping me on my toes, really inspiring, just beautiful, the lyrics, just like you know, and you just, I'm like, how did I miss this? But it's like the redwood tree, you know, like everything is at a certain point in your growth. My singing, like all of it just happens at certain stages, and that's when it's supposed to happen. And I'm lucky to be a late bloomer, you know.
All right, we're going to have music. I just have to ask you one more question, because you were talking about all that Grateful Dead music. You approach most of it so differently than Phil Lesh.
I have to.
And so, but was that, you know, was there a moment where you went to these guys and discussed it with them? Or, you know?
I was, man, like the second day in the rehearsal, I was just like, because I love that Grateful Dead sound, and, you know, I want to make that happen. And Phil is such a huge part of that sound. So much of it, you know, and I can't do it. And I'm pretty good at imitating people, but this is like, you know, and he's very purposeful about doing that, you know. He has this saying he always says, it's the artist's duty to confound expectation. So he's like, if my expectation is for me to play bass, then I'm going to do something different than that. Not necessarily diametrically opposed, but I'm going to go to the left of the expectation. Barry Oakley was the exact same way. And so I went to Bob and I was like, man, I'm stuck here in my head. And Bob essentially, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but he was like, look, you got to be yourself on this stuff. So be what you are. You're black, play it black. And I was like, so, and he's right. Like, if you look at the way I and I was like, well, you know, every time there's a blues tune, I put my foot into the shuffle, you know. There's a lot of funk. I can put my foot, you know, like I can do what I do, what I would normally do. There's a lot of New Orleans-y kind of groove, so I'll just like play like a tuba. If you listen to like New Orleans tunes and think of tuba, and you'll be like, he's like trying to play like a tuba, you know, and or a sousaphone, and you know, so and there's a lot of black music that's in the, you know, R&B stuff and whatever, Fats Domino, Chuck Berry, New Orleans stuff, like all of that. So I get, there's only one thing I'm working on it. I'm gonna try to get Bertha like Phil. And me and John were talking about that, like, and I play with a pick. I'm like trying to do. I even talked to the sound man, like, how is his tone on this? Because I can't do it without trying to get that tone. Because, you know, that's just one of those things, man, that's just like, I got to get Bertha.
All right. We have to end it because we got to get to the music. We have so much great music coming, and we do have to turn it on. So thank you so much. Everyone be patient for just a minute. Thank you, Oteil.
Actually, let me move over a little bit. It's weird for me doing this without the inner ear monitors, but it's quiet, so. Where's my water?
Right in front of you.
Oh yeah, this is Tom Guarna, one of my favorite guitarists. He has a new album that's about to come out called Wishing Stones with some heavy cats. John Patitucci on bass, Brian Blade on drums, John Cowherd on piano, heavyweights. One of the very few people I've ever asked for a lesson. It's this guy. Him, Kofi, and Reggie Wooten. I'm going to do a couple of Garcia Hunter tunes for you. Thought I heard a blackbird singing up on Bluebird Hill. Call me a whining boy if you will. Born where the sun don't shine and I don't deny my name. Got no place to go, ain't that a shame? Thought I heard that Casey whistle moaning sleet and low. Thought I heard the Casey when she blow. Down where the sun don't shine underneath the Kokomo. Whining boy ain't got no place to go. So many roads I tell you, so many roads I know. So many roads, so many roads. Mountain high and river wide, so many roads to ride. So many roads, so many roads. Thought I heard a jug band playing, if you don't, who else will? Over on the far side of the hill. All I know, the sun don't shine and the rain refused to fall. And you can't hear me when I call. Wind inside and the wind outside, tangled in the window blind. Tell me why you treat me so unkind. Down where the sun don't shine, lonely and I call your name. No place left to go, ain't that a shame? New York to San Francisco, so many roads I know. All I want is one to take me home. From the high road to the low road, so many roads I know. So many roads, so many roads. From the land of the midnight sun, where the ice blue roses grow, along the roads of gold and silver snow, howling wide or moaning low, so many roads I know, so many roads to ease my soul. 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 Hopefully I'll get away with this one. To lay me down once more, to lay me down with my hand in sparkling clover. Let the world go by. All lost in dreaming. To lay me down one last time, to lay me down, to lay me down once more to be with you. With our bodies close together, let the world go by like the clouds are streaming to lay me down one last time, to lay me down, to lay me down. Oh, to lay me down, to lay me down one last time, to lay me down. To lie with you once more, to lie with you, with our dreams entwined together, to wake beside you, my love still sleeping, to lay me down one last time and say goodbye, to lay me down I get pretty choked up singing these still sometimes, so I messed up the last line. But
Mike, let's hear it. Oteil.
Tom Guana.
Tom, thank you all so much. Remember, Oteil's going to be signing merch and meeting and greeting. There's another band coming. I don't think we can do one more, but
also, I just want to say one thing too. Tom's record release is at the Jazz Standard. Is that what it's called? On February 6th, right here. Y'all come see it. Heavyweights.
you want to do one more?
If we have time, yeah.
All right, we can do one more.
Okay.
All right, we'll do one more song if everyone promises to go buy Water in the Desert. He won't say it, but I will. It's a wonderful album. It sounds like he speaks, just like that. Soulful and beautiful. Enjoy it.
Thank you. Give it to you, long as you live. Would you let it fall? Oh, hold it all in your arms. If I had a song to sing, I'd sing it to you as long as you live. Lullaby, or maybe a plain serenade. Wouldn't you laugh, dance and cry, or be afraid at the trade you made? I may not have the world to give to you, but maybe I have a tune or two. Only if you let me be your world, could I ever give this world to you? Could I ever give this world to you? But I will give what love I have to give. I will give what love I have to give. I will give what love I have to give as long as I live. If I had a star to give, I'd give it to you as long as you live. Would you have the time to watch it shine watch it shine. Or ask for the moon and heaven too. I give it to you. Maybe I've got no star to spare, or anything fine or even rare. Only if you let me be your world would I ever give this world to you. Could I ever give this world to you? 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 Thank you.
Thank you, Oteil. Thank you. Thank you all for coming out. Thanks to Guitar World for hosting, the Cutting Room for hosting us here. And remember, Oteil will be in the front with the merch and whatnot in a minute.